Welcome, welcome, welcome back to Damon Bruce Plus. Andrew Siciliano of At Siciliano Show joins us, formerly of NFL Network, currently of the Cleveland Browns, and just an all-around good guy. And there are no more all-around good guys who are better guys than Sam Betesh, who has worked with Andrew for years, knows everything about the sports business, including how to talk about day 3 of free agency. And gentlemen, that is why you're here. It is great to see you. Thank you so much for stopping on by tonight. We are co-streaming on Andrew's page on the Plus, brought to you by Ike Sandwiches. And I'll have to send you a free sandwich card, Andrew.
At 9 o'clock, Damon, I would love a sandwich. At midnight in the East, get in my belly.
Absolutely.
Give me a sandwich.
You know, there's a sandwich with Damon's name on it at Ike's, by the way, Andrew. So it's beautiful. Includes onion rings as well on the sandwich. So
I did not know that.
I'm just saying, Andrew, I don't mean to get you distracted, but look at me.
Oh, look at that.
Look at that. Does that not look like something your doctor warns you about? I'm very proud of that. I really am.
Onion rings and coleslaw and tomatoes?
It's a little steakhouse crunch with a little provolone, little Godfather sauce on it. It's just,
that is gorgeous.
Explosion. It's flavor explosion. Look, it's great to have everyone here. Like and subscribe across all 3 channels. It's a real pleasure to have 2 friends in here to talk about a whole bunch of free agency. We'll put some letter grades on some decisions, but we got to start with the very latest and greatest that the 49ers consummated within like the last 90 minutes. Mac Jones. It's so funny. You know, a few years ago in the Trey Lance draft, was it going to be Mac Jones that Kyle fell in love with or Trey Lance? Obviously, Kyle chose the wrong relationship. I don't know if Mac Jones would have been the right relationship, but this relationship is going to start after all. $7 million contract, $5 million guaranteed. It's a 2-year deal, max value of 11.5. Mac Jones to the 49ers after all these years. Gentlemen, what do you think?
For Mac Jones, Damon, I love it. And look, it could go well for the Niners too, but for Mac Jones, you go to the Kyle Shanahan School of Quarterback Rehabilitation. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Best case scenario, you get in, you play a little bit, you look good. Worst case scenario, you sit there, Brock Purdy does the whole thing. You never get in a game except to take a knee or mop up. But regardless, then everybody a year from now around the league says, well, wait a minute. Mac Jones learned at the knee of Kyle Shanahan for the past year. Maybe he's the next, dare I say, Sam Darnold. He's the next reclamation project where instead of making 3 or whatever the number is, he can go somewhere else and get a shot at a starting job, make decent middle of the road, maybe not Daniel Jones $14 million in Indianapolis money, but he gets a shot next year. For the only way this goes badly for Mac Jones is if he has to play and plays horribly, but minus that scenario, it's a great setup for him.
I remember Mac Jones. I'm looking back at what Mac Jones did with Jacksonville, and I'm actually, it seems to me, it feels a little more as if I'm thinking about Trevor Lawrence and what happened. How exactly did that happen that Mac played as much as he did last season? And of course, the ugly hit on Trevor Lawrence, of course, led to so much of that. But I also go back to Mac Jones and that first season. Remember that Mac was a playoff quarterback. Now, it was an ugly and brutal loss to the Bills, and that was Belichick and Mac Jones in that playoff game with New England, and it was awful. Josh Allen, I mean, the Bills smashed the Patriots that day, but it felt in that moment like maybe there's something here with Mac Jones, right? I mean, it felt in that moment, wow, the Patriots are going to do it again. It really just felt like, wow, they found it, and it never ends for them. They can't go wrong at quarterback. And then it was just flat. And I'm sorry, but I don't know that I don't know that I can convince myself that there's a spark, that there's something there with Mac Jones. I think with Darnold, there was more because coming into the draft, there was so much around Darnold, and we always expected that it was somewhere in there. I don't know that I feel the same way about Mac Jones. I don't think Niners fans are excited. Damon, you could tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think the idea that Mac Jones is starting games. I mean, if Brock Purdy is down. I mean, look, no one expected last season. I remember how surprising it was when Purdy actually missed that game. I remember that was the Packers game, right? I remember how shocking it was before that game when Purdy was out. But if that happens again this season, I don't feel as if the Niners are now jazzed that Mac Jones is the guy that can come in here and do something. I'm sorry, but I don't see all of the upside on Mac Jones. There's not like an intangible aspect to what Mac Jones brings to the table.
The upside is the ruby that you might be able to find when you finish polishing it, right? I mean, that's it. And the fact that, he was in a good situation, then got humbled by it, goes to another situation, now comes to a situation that could maybe, reignite his career. I think he's got to be excited about it. Kyle puts his hands on quarterbacks. They make money in other places. We've seen that. I'm also going to give him the benefit of the doubt of that was a really bad New England team. It was better when it started, and then it got bad. I mean, weren't they going from like Bill O'Brien to Matt Patricia at that point?
Matt Patricia was calling plays.
Yeah, and they just did not have a complement of talent really around him. So, different faces in different places. We'll see. Is there enough of a quarterback here to challenge Brock Purdy in any way? Object in the rearview mirror closer than it appears? I don't think so. But what I would like to see, now that the 49ers have freed up so much money with a real exodus of free agent talent, I'd like to see them get that Brock Purdy deal put to bed by the end of next week. I mean, there's no reason not to. That's going to be your quarterback. And then I'd like to even see him come back with extensions for Kittle and Warner. They've got the money to do it. And I think that the fan base could use some good news, to be honest with you. And I think just locking in the numbers on those guys today, it's going to be less expensive than tomorrow.
It's always less expensive to do it today. I mean, look at the Cowboys with Micah Parsons. Look at the Cowboys with Dak. Look at the Cowboys with CeeDee Lamb. Look at the Bengals with Jamar Chase. Look at the Bengals with T. Higgins. It is always cheaper to do the deal now. Even Trevor Lawrence now. Maybe the Jaguars wish they hadn't done that deal a year ago because last year went down the drain, but they're hitting a reset now. And I think Liam Cohen is the guy that could potentially turn it around and get you the Trevor Lawrence you thought you had when they won a playoff game 2 years ago or 3, whatever it is by this point. But what's the number, Damon? That's the question. What's the number for Brock Purdy? Because it's not going to begin with a 6. That's absurd. Dak got there. Josh Allen is at 55 with $250 guaranteed and $330 in funny money. Does Brock Purdy fall between 50 and 55? Does he fall between 45 and 50? He was picked 262, and you don't want to hold his draft his draft position against him. But if he were to hit the open market right now, is he getting 55? And if you think the answer is no, you can't give him 55.
But you can give him 50. I think
it's not your money. It's easy to say.
It's always so easy for me to give away somebody else's money. It's so true. But think about this one, Andrew and Damon. He's been to the NFC Championship twice, and he's been to a Super Bowl in the span of 4 seasons. And I just don't. There's not a long list of quarterbacks like that. And of course, you have to consider the talent that's around him. Yes, but Brock Purdy doesn't simply maneuver this offense. Brock Purdy is making plays within this offense. It's not the most talented offensive roster in football where you could say you could just plug anybody in there and it's going to happen. That's not the case. And I always go back to this. We both remember that game where the Niners were up on the Rams this year. The Rams came back and won the game. It was the first matchup between these two teams. But Purdy played fantastic without McCaffrey, without Kittle, without Debo. It was either Debo or Ayuk were out of that game as well. And it was a Jawan Jennings hat trick, but he played fantastic in that game. And it was just one of those where you say, okay, here's what Brock could look like with very little around him. And I just feel as if he has learned under Shanahan. He's a different quarterback than the one that went to the NFC Championship the year that Trey Lance started the season. That first year that he was in there, maybe you could say he's just getting it right. And I know the win streak, he gets a lot of credit for the win streak. All quarterbacks get credit for win streaks, and it's not all on them clearly. But Brock Purdy is a playmaker. I'm sorry, I'm going to give away someone else's $50 million. I think that's what he is, and I think he would get that. Andrew, you always the rule you've taught me more than any is your quarterback's expensive if he's the most recent quarterback getting signed.
Sure.
Period.
But he's not getting Josh Allen money.
No, I think it's going to be, one of those 5-year contracts that isn't really a 5-year contract. It's a 3-year contract, guaranteed money. somewhere between 100 and 125 million, and then an annual average value that feels digestible, right? I mean, because guaranteed money is really all that matters. Everything else is agent window dressing. So I would only be concerned about that if I were Brock. I just know that the 49ers told us that they were going to be more financially prudent, and they have been so far. Look at some of the decisions. We were talking about them just last week, Sammy. Andrew, I'd like, what do you think is going on with the 49ers here? Extreme retool? Would you even classify it as a rebuild? I mean, they're not changing their fingerprints. It's still Shanahan, Purdy, and Lynch. A lot of the DNA is there, but a lot of familiar names, Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, chief among them, out of the building. That's going to change things.
I would call it an extreme remodel, maybe. I mean, look, the team is old and injured and expensive. Look, if you could get something for McCaffrey, I'd trade him too. Why not? I love the guy, and you're a better team with him. But do you really think you're going to tear it down to the studs and go win the NFC West? I wouldn't put it past Kyle, nor John Lynch for that matter. They're both great at their job. But are you certain that Christian McCaffrey is going to come back and be the same guy, and that he could be the same guy for 17 games? If you're going to get rid of Debo, and obviously he was expensive and injured, I think they wanted Dre Greenlaw back. But if you're going to get rid of 11 of the 22 from the Super Bowl 2 years ago, plus Javon Hargrave, who was injured, but get rid of him as well, then go all in. Like, I don't know what you would get for McCaffrey right now, because you're trading for his contract. You're not just trading for the player. You're trading for the contract.
This is interesting. If this was the
somebody
NBA,
wants to call, I'd listen.
Yeah. If this is the NBA, Andrew, I think you hit on something. We should explore this a little bit. The idea of the Niners without McCaffrey, considering how good. And remember, this team was in the NFC Championship without McCaffrey, right? This team was in an NFC Championship game where Purdy is injured, and this team is still so special without McCaffrey. I mean, obviously that trade was legendary when it happened, and we all thought that was going to lead to a Super Bowl. But this is really worth exploring, because the height of the options and the possibilities of McCaffrey is right now. To trade him now when everyone is assuming that he'll return to form. Everyone's sort of assuming that McCaffrey coming back is going to be that guy. And if this were fantasy football, certainly this would be the conversation. And that's not what we're having. We're having a real conversation. This isn't just about fantasy, but the idea that you could get something for McCaffrey right now to convince everyone that he's still the same guy when maybe you know that he's not, that's interesting, considering what you get out of running backs in this league, and running backs that you're not expecting, and especially with what you saw last season out of Jordan Mason. That's not such a crazy. I mean, my eyes lit up when you said that. When you first said that, I just thought that was nuts. But the more you go into it, considering, again, if the idea is prudent with money, then it's not a wise investment.
To me, you are bringing a spork to a gunfight without McCaffrey, and I don't know if McCaffrey even fires anymore like he used to.
Well, that's the point.
Right.
Are you confident that he's going to get back to be the same guy? He's going to be 29 this summer.
Man, I hope he does. Certainly hope so. That's for sure, because he is the skeleton key that unlocks so much of their playbook, which is going to change. I mean, it's going to change. They are not nearly who they used to be. Maybe McCaffrey can give them a little. Let me ask you, Andrew, because you spend so much time around the Rams, what do you think Cooper Kupp has in terms of a market out there? And might he be at a reduced price point now in his career where the Niners would approach him? I mean, they're looking to get younger and faster, and he doesn't really check either of those boxes, but he does check the box of Cooper Kupp, and I'm good for 100 catches even when I stink.
Yeah, he could still play. I don't know if he would go to the Niners. I mean, that would be wild if he went to the Niners, like all the Sean and Kyle fights over the years, and
right,
all the great games and the classics over the years. That'd be nuts if you were actually a 49er. I think Dallas is a strong possibility. I think Houston's a possibility. I think Jacksonville is a possibility. There are 3 connections there for Cooper, one in each of those. His Eastern Washington wide receiver coach is now a Cowboys assistant. In Houston, you have Nick Caley, who's been the Rams tight ends coach the last couple of years. He's now the new OC. in Houston for the Texans, and then obviously James Gladstone and Liam Cohen in Jacksonville, GM and head coach. I think all three of those fit. He's not going to get $20 million. I'd be stunned if he does. The Rams decided that they would rather, and remember, Cooper Kupp's cap number was 30, his cash was 20, and he's 31 years old. And they decided that if they're going to have a $20 million receiver on the roster, they'd rather have it as Davante Adams, because it's a 2-year deal. $20 million cash this year is a smaller cap hit than a $30 million cap hit this season. Look, Cooper can play. He can still play. He can still catch. He's still not going to drop anything thrown at him. He probably doesn't separate like he used to, but that was never his game. Ever his game. It's craftiness at the top of the route. It's knowing where he's going and you don't know where he's going, and then catching it in between to see hands when Matthew Stafford could thread it in there. I think he has a good season. I don't know where it will be, but the Rams are banking on Davante Adams having a very good season, and they thought that was an upgrade.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past them. Stafford, Adams, Puka, Atwell, Kyron Williams, a young defense which delivered them the division last year. Like, I think the 49ers got a very big headache waiting for them in the LA Rams. It feels like the Seahawks have regressed, and as usual, Arizona hasn't done too much to get on anybody's radar.
They signed Dalvin Tomlinson today. Come on, that's my guy.
There you go.
And
glove or whatever the heck that is.
And Josh Sweat as well, along with that.
Exactly.
That's, I mean, it's quietly Arizona may have, and remember they started in this season. I mean, look, every team in the West at some point was in first place in the division this season. But I mean, Arizona had a moment where it felt like that could happen. By the way, I like the idea of Cooper Kupp in Green Bay. I mean, as an Eagles fan, I don't love it, but I felt like, I mean, Green Bay had issues at receiver. And considering what Jordan Love was able to do 2 seasons ago, it felt like they were on the doorstep, and then a little bit, not necessarily a step back, but Green Bay was undeniably injured in that wild card game against the Eagles. That was a banged up unit coming in, and obviously at the receiver position, and then banged up within the game at receiver. But I could see Cooper Kupp even leading that receiver room potentially. You know, there's a lot of 1Bs in Green Bay when you look at the receivers, and Kupp seems to, I could see him really shoring up that room for them in a team that feels like they're really close. Green Bay is still very close. Of course, Detroit and Minnesota had the seasons they did, but Green Bay's close.
It's our final Niners question that'll help us feather out to the rest of free agency. But basically, Joey Bosa had to choose between tax-free, state income tax-free living in Florida with Miami or his brother's love. And he chose most amount of money that comes with an ice scraper to go to Buffalo. I'll say this, on pure, I'm going to a contender. It's a right move. If he has a really good year in Buffalo, maybe the 49ers should have upped their asking price. There's also a very good chance he is shut down by week 11, because that's what happens to Joey Bosa. What do you think of him emerging in Buffalo out of nowhere when it really seemed to be between Miami and 49ers? Buffalo it is for Joey Bosa.
I love it for him. You put him with Greg Rousseau. He replaces Von Miller. He gets to play for a team that's a legitimate championship contender. Good for Joey. There's no way the Niners are going to give him $12 million. As much fun as it would have been to see the Bosas, like we saw the McCourties, would have been cool. But yeah, you go to Buffalo, you get $12 million, you get to play with Josh Allen. It's not like he can't deal with the snow. He played at Ohio State.
Right.
So, I mean, Josh Palmer's going there as well. It's like this. And who else? Someone from the Rams is going there. I mean, it's like half of LA. Taylor Rapp is there as well. Rams, Chargers, they all go to Buffalo. Good for Joey. I hope it works out. But he hasn't stayed healthy, David. Like you said, over the last 3 seasons combined, he has missed more than a full season's worth of games.
I'm upset we're not going to see it. I simply, just selfishly, I wanted the Bosa Bros. I wanted the Bash Bosa Bros in the Bay. I just thought that would have been, and not just from a cute and adorable perspective. I think Nick is elite. And Joey, I just could have seen Joey getting a lift from playing with his brother. And yeah, you say Buffalo's a contender. yes, last season was a step back, but everyone still has the Niners. I mean, if you go to Vegas right now and you're trying to pick a team out of the NFC to go to the Super Bowl, you got to pay a premium for the Niners, the Lions, the Eagles, right? I mean, the Niners are still in that
I'm not giving
conversation.
gambling advice here. You think the 49ers, considering everything they just got rid of in the last 48 hours, is still an NFC championship contender?
In Vegas, they are. That's what I mean is it's still, I think the public still has this idea that the Niners were injured. Right, it will, but I mean, follow me on that. People are kind of, the Niners were injured. It's really easy for people to say that, especially in a world where Christian McCaffrey, in people's minds, is their best player, and he missed so much of the season. So people like to just slot him back in and say they're that close. So Bosa, to me, felt like that. It's in a way, it's hard to fault Joey for what he did because Buffalo was so close also. You know, right. when a player takes a lot of money and ends up in Carolina right now with where the Panthers are at, it's like, okay, what are you thinking? But he takes that much money, and yes, it's in the cold in Buffalo, but we're talking about MVP at quarterback in the AFC Championship game. You know, this is a team that feels like they're that close, and Joey may think that's his best shot at a ring at this point.
By the way, we got a little postman in Capitola who always gets one of these. He gets one of those. Sam, Andrew, D. Bruce, love it. Let's go. Postman, thank you. Great to have you. Hey, whether you're watching over on @Siciliano Show or over here on Damon Bruce Plus, or considering, geez, how come we're not co-streaming on Sammy as well? That is thinking out loud. Like and subscribe to all three if you would. It is effortless to just go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. It doesn't cost you a dime to do that, but it makes the algorithm kiss us all on the forehead. And that's what we're looking to have happen. Since the topic was just taking a lot of money, not exactly being in the most competitive situation, Andrew, I think this brings us to the Cleveland Browns and the choice that Myles Garrett just made. When Jimmy Haslam said, I'm not taking the meeting, I thought that was really going to be it. $40 million, I guess, cools all hot heads, does it not?
The timeline, it's going to be interesting to unpack the timeline when we finally hear from all parties, right? Eventually there'll be a press conference and everyone gets to say what they want to say. Damon said this repeatedly in Indianapolis, and for that matter, in New Orleans. Remember Myles Garrett made his statement. He did it on Twitter and on Instagram and all the socials on the Monday of the Super Bowl. He would like to get traded. I reminded people that 2 years ago, actually, Lamar Jackson said the exact same thing. And a month to the day later, after he posted his "Thank you, Baltimore, it's been nice knowing you," he signed his big contract. Now, it was very different then. His mother was his agent. It was, I want out of here. I want a new contract. Myles said, I don't want to be here anymore, period. And then they gave him the deal. When I was doing radio interviews in Indianapolis, they said, how is this going to play out? I said two things. Number one, they will not trade him. Number two, we're 6 months until the first game. And then actually three things. Number three, I think they're going to put a contract in front of him for $40 million a year. I just guessed that number. Max Crosby hadn't done his yet. I just guessed 40. And I said, if he turns down 40, then we'll cross that bridge then. It'll be an entirely different conversation if he turns down 40. They put 40 in front of him, and he said yes. And I know there are a lot of people out there that want to say, oh, well, you're a fraud. You said it wasn't about the money, and then it was about the money. Okay, fine. Really? You're going to blame him for taking $40 million a year? He changed his mind. You ever change your mind? $40 million a year. God forbid.
It's a strong
argument.
argument.
You should be so lucky as to have that dilemma to turn it down. Now, The Browns will tell you, and I will tell you, that in each of the last two seasons, the team that picked second took a quarterback and made the playoffs. The Texans with CJ, and then last year, the Commanders with Jaden Daniels. I don't know that quarterback is in this draft. I personally think it's Cam Ward. I don't know if he's going to be there at 2. The Browns are older and more expensive than the team that made the playoffs 14 months ago now, and lost to the Texans in Houston. That game was a heartbreak, but they do think that with some pieces and the right quarterback, they can turn it around. Now, is that quarterback in this draft? I don't know, but they are happy, and I think everyone wins here, that they have the guy still in uniform who, A, is going to Canton, B is the best defensive player in the NFL, and C is the best defensive player, Damon, to ever wear their uniform, original Browns from the 40s, or this, the rebirth, the second coming in 99.
These Browns are closer than people think. These Browns are closer with Myles Garrett, certainly. So this move does make sense. And with what we saw in the Super Bowl, teams building through the defensive line makes perfect sense, and building around a player like Myles Garrett. And look what happened. I would say so far, we're talking about free agency and the players who moved to different places. But so far, the biggest signings in this free agency frenzy, everything we've seen so far, the most exciting players have all re-signed. Am I right? Well, I mean, the money that's gone around so far, the most exciting.
DK got traded.
DK, right? DK got traded. I'd say that's the biggest. But look at Stafford, Max Crosby, Garrett. Saquon made more money. It's not a re-sign. That he wasn't going to go anywhere necessarily. But look at what's happened. Players are getting money. That it's the players staying with teams that are actually the biggest and most impactful names, led by Myles Garrett. And by the way, and Stafford was going to be the most interesting piece of the quarterback carousel when that was happening. And there were a couple of days when he was talking to teams. That was actually the most exciting and interesting. And then he stays with the Rams. And then Max stays with the Raiders. And then Myles stays with the Browns. Those were really some of the most interesting and impactful pieces. And sometimes that's what you have to do as an organization, is pony up and pay for those players that are going to shape your organization. And it's clear the Browns also know they're not going to be paying. This tells you likely they're not going to be overpaying for a free agent quarterback. They
pay a free agent quarterback.
Exactly. So they know that they won't have to. They don't have the dilemma the Niners do, where they're about to pay a quarterback $50 million. So they can pay Myles Garrett $40 million. The Raiders are already paying. I mean, think about what the Raiders do. The Raiders are so committed now at both quarterback and with Max Crosby, and the Browns likely are going to be paying a quarterback on a rookie contract.
What do you think of the Geno Smith to the Raiders? Look, Geno and Pete Carroll all of a sudden got the Raiders like skipping towards credibility faster than they normally do. I like them. I don't think either guy has a playoff appearance maybe with the Raiders, but I think they're a better football team for sure right now, and it's some stability and credibility, which they were in short supply of both.
Yeah, I mean, yes to all of that. It's funny, Damon. Sam and I, was it last week? I've lost track of days. I think last week we were doing our pod, and I said, hey, you guys got to keep an eye on the Seattle situation, because he wants an extension. He's due $25 million. He was fourth in the NFL in passing yards last year. I know there were a lot of turnovers. I know it was not the season anyone wanted. I know they lost the tie at the end to win the division. The season overall was a disappointment. But you're heading into the final year of the deal at $25 million. They have to do something. Keep an eye on that one. They might deal him. Something might happen there. And then Sam goes, how about the Raiders? And I said, how about the Steelers? He played at West Virginia right down the road. Sam was right, an hour later or a day later. It was the Raiders. I think it's great for Geno, and I think it's good for the Raiders. I think the most interesting thing for me is, what does it do to the top 10 of the draft? Are the Raiders truly out of the quarterback conversation? Let's say potentially Shedeur is there, and I think he could be, and I think he will be, actually. Do they still love him? Did they ever love him? Was that all just a figment of our imagination? Was there the Antonio Pierce connection there? Was that the whole thing? If he's there, do you, at that point, already give Geno an extension? That hasn't happened yet. And are you in or out of the quarterback business? And if you're out and he falls past you, meaning Shedeur, are the Jets in the quarterback business after guaranteeing $30 million and they're sitting there at 7 to Justin Fields? What about Aaron Rodgers? I'm sure you want to talk about that later as well, but if he goes to the Giants, they have to be out of the quarterback business, right? Because you would think you go get Travis Hunter if he's there and put him with Malik Neighbors. So the veteran quarterback pieces, and Geno being one of them, and how it affects the draft, to me, is the most interesting storyline out of anything here.
And the Falcons should change the way we think about this entirely. And remember, the Falcons were a game away from making the playoffs last season, and the offseason story for the Falcons was Kirk Cousins, but look who would have gotten them into the playoffs was Michael Penix, who they stunned everyone with by taking in the draft after giving Kirk Cousins $180 million, and Geno does not cost that much. So that's an excellent point. Maybe there's still a competition there to be had.
forget about teams wanting Aaron Rodgers. If you're Aaron Rodgers, what team do you want to go to?
I think you wanted to go to the Rams. That didn't happen. The whole Matthew Stafford chess piece kind of, messed with the board, if you will. Did you guys see like the British tabloid photos this morning of Aaron Rodgers allegedly walking down the beach in Malibu yesterday?
Oh, that's great.
With a blanket wrapped. It was cold here. I mean, it's cold by the beach, right? Like
Sure.
with a blanket wrapped over his shoulders.
Was he helping with fire debris? What was he doing in Malibu?
Oh, no. I mean, not all of Malibu, as you know.
True, but yeah.
Southern California here, not all of Malibu is
Extra ayahuasca-y in this photo.
Like, I gotta find whatever the headline was. It was like forlorn Aaron Rodgers looks sad on beach as he contemplates future. All I know is, can you just make up your mind? And I'm not like the angry insider who has to stay up all night with his phone in hand, keeping the entire house up because I'm waiting for a text to report where Aaron Rodgers goes. But I can tell you the Steelers and the Giants would like an answer, because there are a lot of chess pieces here. If he goes to the Giants, it means Russell Wilson goes to the Steelers. If he goes to the Steelers, it means Russell Wilson either goes to the Browns or the Giants, and he's allegedly visiting them both. And all of that, like we just laid out, affects the top 5 and the top 10. I know we're 43 days away. But Aaron Rodgers is like the only piece here, Damon, that can't give us the respect of an answer. There's the photo. Look
There
at
he
that.
is.
Oh, good. Damon, way to go.
Like,
way
what
to
is
cry.
that?
What is he wearing? What is he wearing? And it's probably sold out already, right? What is he wearing? And everyone already now owns that.
Isn't that just a blanket?
Right. It looks like a black blanket or beach blanket, or, maybe he's got one of those really, I mean, what is it wrong to call it an Armenian bathroom where
Okay, yeah.
black and gold and black and gold, black and gold. I mean, or, maybe
It actually looks like something someone when they are rescued from a fire, actually, on a movie, right? Isn't that the blanket that they put around them?
The fire blanket. I'm telling you, there's something going on there. There's probably some $8,000 Versace blanket. There's no way anything about Aaron's ever
Made of
normal.
real alpaca. I give Florio credit. Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, said
That's so
like
good.
He was shrouded in velvet. I don't think that's velvet. It just
What
looks
is this,
like
velvet?
a blanket off the couch. Like you're cold. Somebody give the man a blanket.
That's
By the
funny.
campfire, except he's on the beach.
Am I the only one who wants to see him? Am I the only one who wants to see Rodgers in Minnesota?
You
No,
can
you're not
drape
the only
yourself
one.
in velvet. You can drape yourself. Here's the thing. I think if you're Rodgers, you would want to go to Minnesota, but for the fact everyone's going to just say, well, then the last thing for you to do is embezzle money and build a volleyball gym.
Wow.
I mean, how much
much more-
Brett Favre can he get away with?
But
he
remember,
plays Jordan Love or face Jordan Love twice every year.
and
That would be sexy.
And again, those were not, it wasn't just following Favre. Favre had the resurgence in Minnesota, and this Minnesota team feels very close yet again. This would be, I mean, Favre has Minnesota in an NFC championship against the Saints. Obviously, he throws an interception late, and that game ends the way that it does, and the Saints end up winning the Super Bowl. But Minnesota's also a great team.
They're by far the best team of these three options.
Right. You're talking Pittsburgh, Giants, and the Vikings. If you're just choosing, you want Minnesota there. And not only that, it's not like this is a team that, okay, they did it all on defense. I mean, from a quarterback standpoint, look at who you're throwing the ball to. I mean, Justin Jefferson and Addison, come on.
What's the Kevin O'Connell secret sauce that has everybody who meets him for 5 minutes just in love with him, Andrew?
He's a really good dude, and he has an emotional intelligence and an empathy to him that players love, buildings love, and he's a damn good play caller. I mean, he's a really good play caller. And yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers would be great. Now, it would be a challenge for him, just like it would have been a challenge for Sean McVay. It would be a challenge for Brian Daboll. It'll be a challenge for Arthur Smith. He's Aaron Rodgers. By the way, I'm not breaking news here. He's not the easiest guy to work with. He likes to do things his way, but it would sure be fun to watch. If you're him, would you rather face Jordan Love twice, play indoors in your old division, like you get to go back to Soldier Field and claim you still own that building as well, and you get Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson in no particular order? Or would you rather go to the Steelers, play in also a very good division, they're probably the two best divisions in football, and go and throw the ball to DK Metcalf and
potentially Pickens, but
an immature, let's just say it, call it like it is, George Pickens, would you rather go there? I'd rather go to Minnesota. Just me.
I can't imagine how he's not leaning in that direction. I just can't imagine, just from a divisional standpoint, from what he knows, how could he not be leaning towards that? And in regards to who he is and how he dictated terms in New York, didn't he convince himself that wasn't the best way to go? Didn't the past 2 seasons teach him anything? I know one is an injury, but last year was ugly. Every single step they took was a disaster last season for the Jets. Period. They were better with Zach Wilson. I mean, that's it. That's all you have to say.
Why would you want to play in the same building on the same turf? Like, you want to exercise those things?
Get out of there.
Knowing that all honest grades would just be 32 incompletes because we're just 3 days into free agency. So it's unfair to give anybody a grade, but through 3 days, who do you think is sitting in pole position of the team that's done the best to help itself through 3 days of free agency?
I'd say even without Aaron Rodgers, the Vikings or the Bears. I mean, the Vikings and the Bears did the same thing. They went heavy onto the O-line, heavy onto the D-line. They beefed up them both. So maybe the Bears, if you want to, if you're buying low and try to make a profit off that. The Vikings obviously were a double-digit win team and they made the playoffs before they ran into the buzzsaw that was the Rams D-line and those 9 sacks. But I love what they both did. And the Bears kind of admitted we screwed up last year by going not by drafting Rome Odunze, but by going Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen and thinking that was good enough and bringing it back in instead of just building up the line, and they're getting a do-over.
Yeah. If you're a team,
Sammy, you and I, as soon as the Super Bowl was over, we said, what's the lesson of this postseason? It's if you're not preparing for trench warfare, you're going to lose the war. And I think Minnesota and Chicago are far and away the 2 teams that through free agency have addressed the most amount of trench warfare out there.
Absolutely. And the team I'm most excited about, considering where they finished and now where they could be based on free agency, I still like the Rams. I think the Rams are young at a lot of key positions, and the Davante Adams thing could make that could give Stafford the resurgence. I'm talking 1 season. I'm looking at 1 season for the Rams. I think we're right. The Bears did the most for their future overall. But if you're just looking at how the season ended, and if I could just spin it forward with now the extra pieces, I do really, that Davante Adams thing could really make a difference. I mean, I guess in some ways we don't know exactly which Davante we're getting, but there were moments when Davante was every bit of that. And if he's anything like that, wow.
And Damon, let me add this too. Rams D-line got better. They added Poona Ford. Poona Ford is an upgrade over Neville Gallimore. So that D-line that ate down the stretch got better.
The 15 sacks in 2 playoff games.
Is that good?
That's disgusting. And consider the opponents also. I mean, that's 9 against the Vikings, 6 against the Eagles. And you know this, Andrew, the Rams, you can easily sort of close your eyes, picture that 3rd and 4th down against the Eagles went differently. And then you're hosting Washington in the NFC Championship, and the defensive line with 2 sacks through 2 games gets to face the Kansas City team that we now know fell apart on the offensive line in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, they would have won the Super Bowl if they beat the Eagles. I believe that. I don't think I don't think that one's breaking news. It doesn't matter.
No, but
I mean, if it didn't happen, but I think if they had beaten the Eagles, the Rams would have not only beaten the Commanders, but when you saw what happened to the Chiefs O-line when they finally turned into a pumpkin, give Joe Thuney all the credit. I mean, he helped hold the thing together down the stretch. I think the Rams would have done that to Patrick Mahomes in New Orleans.
In terms of through 3 days, demonstrably worse, it's really easy to look at the 49ers and kind of hang it on them. But I'll tell you, there's more name value than actual, I think, impact walking out the door at this particular time. I love Dre Greenlaw, but for the price coming off an Achilles, it is a walk away. I get it. I really do. It's too bad they can't keep Talanoa Hufanga. Few other names that you would have liked to seen stick around. Kyle Juszczyk, great guy at a hard to define position that I don't think he was good for 2 wheel routes a year. That's where it was for Kyle Juszczyk. Very overrated in terms of what he was doing to help the Niners win throughout the season. But I'm not ready to declare them the biggest loser because I don't think that they've lost nearly as much as some people think that they've lost.
And you have 6 months.
Exactly.
It's not over.
Not even
Not
close
over.
to being over. But as you look at it, who is at a disadvantage 3 days into free agency? Does a certain team ring a bell?
I mean, I would have to say the Niners. I know some Charger fans are not that they're at a disadvantage, are disappointed. They haven't been at the top of the market spending money. Mike Williams coming back tonight is a nice one, but is it a total game changer? I think a lot of Chargers fans assume by now they would have a game-breaking wide receiver, and they do not. The Browns and the Steelers are kind of in wait and see mode because let's just say that neither gets Russell Wilson or gets that veteran quarterback, or Kirk Cousins doesn't get released in the next 4 days by the Falcons, and I don't think he's going to, then there is a legit chance that the Browns and or the Steelers go into the draft without knowing who their day one quarterback is. Now, that's not to call them losers. The Browns got Myles Garrett back, and the Steelers got DK Metcalf in that trade. They gave him the big contract, but I think there are question marks there, certainly. So I think teams that have question marks give their fans anxiety, but I'm not ready yet to call anyone the L word.
This one will be easy because I don't think it's that insulting. It's a franchise that's used to this word. But if you're a Jaguars fan, what are you convincing yourself of right now?
You're convincing yourself James Gladstone knows what he's doing.
Exactly. You're really banking at this point on completely retooled front office and head coach. You're paid your quarterback at this point. You'd have to tell yourself you've overpaid for your quarterback at this point, considering what happened last season. You've lost Christian Kirk. There's no splash in free agency. Now, of course, you're going to have a draft pick that's going to make a massive difference here. But Jacksonville, remember, and they're not just this Jacksonville, think about it. It's not that long ago that they were beating the Patriots in an AFC championship game with a chance to go to the Super Bowl with Blake Bortles. We're not talking generations ago. And this is a team that had a remarkable comeback with Trevor Lawrence against the Chargers in a playoff game and had Patrick Mahomes injured in a divisional game 2 seasons ago. So this is like now when you say Jacksonville and it's, you're thinking Urban Meyer and you're sort of thinking it's a disaster, but it really hasn't been. This team's been close in all these little moments. And I wish there was something. I felt like that was a team that needed to make a splash. And yes, the draft, we're judging on free. You're asking us to judge and grade on through this free agency point. I'm going to say I wanted Jacksonville to do something exciting because there's so many question marks.
Well, they ran me out of town. I don't know why they decided to run me, Trent Baalke, out of town, but they did that finally. I bowed to pressure. They should have done it.
They got the Players Championship. I mean, they got Sawgrass this weekend.
Does this say Mac Jones to the Niners? Yes, the thumbnail did say that. The thumbnail also said we'd be having Andrew Siciliano and Sam Betesh with us. And what do you know? The thumbnail absolutely
never
delivered.
lies.
Gentlemen, let's wrap up with this on a Wednesday night, late night live stream. Thanks to everyone again. Like and subscribe across all 3 YouTube channels. That is Thinking Out Loud. That is at Andrew Siciliano Show. And of course, Damon Bruce Plus. Like and subscribe all around. Who's your draft crush? It's the time of year we start getting crushes on, 20-year-old men. And I'll tell you, my draft crush before the combine was Armand Membu. And then he turned into everybody's crush after the combine with that time that he ran in the 40. I don't think he's going to be there for the Niners at 11. Niners might be looking to go defensive line before they go offensive line in this draft. But Membu, to me, is just a hell of a player in the making. That's my crush. Who's yours?
Other than Cam Ward, I would say, and other than Ashton Genty, I'm going to throw a curveball at you. I'm going to say Omarion Hampton, the running back at North Carolina. I'm not suggesting he's going to go ahead of Ashton Genty. but I'd be stunned if he makes it to day 2. And I think I'm not. This is my early fantasy tip for you. Go get him wherever he goes.
Are running backs back in fashion?
Yes.
Not in free agency, Damon.
Okay.
Not in free agency. Look at some of the contracts of the running backs that have been signed in the last 2 days. They're nothing.
Right.
Nothing whatsoever. Just because the guys got paid last year and those guys played well. That was a unique class. This is as deep a running back class as we have had in a long, long time. I think within 2 years, you get 8 to 10 legit starters out of this year's draft at running back. My buddy Daniel Jeremiah has 3 running backs in his last mock in the first round, which is intense. I don't know that we get 3, but he knows far more than me.
Right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, we're talking other than Genty, like down in the 20s, but this is a great running back class.
Well, I'm going to take that baton and run with it. My crush, without question, is Ashton Genty. I'm sorry, but what we saw at a running back last season tells me that this guy is going to change a franchise upon his immediate draft. I think wherever he goes immediately, he's on the field, he's playing. This is everybody that is in a fantasy keeper league is just waiting to find out when they can draft Ashton Genty. Remember how excited everyone was about Bijan Robinson? Ashton Genty is going to deliver the way Bijan hasn't to this point. Ashton Genty wasn't playing for a powerhouse. Boise State's nice and they were a great story, and Andrew, you saw him up close.
Yeah,
I don't understand. I mean, this guy fell out of bed with 100 yards every fucking week.
Wasn't held under 100 the entire season. And
that's impossible.
Yeah,
that's impossible. So I'd say he's my crush. And if I'm cheating on him, it's with Scadaboo, who, by the way, just an amazing name overall. But the versatility of what Scadaboo did, and I understand he'll end up being a special teamer, right? Scadaboo's going to be.
No, he could play.
I hope so. I hope so. I just have a tough time. Scadaboo, he could be, but it just. What he did in that game against Texas in the span of about 3 minutes in throwing a touchdown pass, catching touchdown passes, running in 2-point conversions, that is as impressive in a game on that stage. That may be the most impressive performance I've seen since Vince Young.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean, just putting big shoes out there to fill. Okay. I guess I got to ask you this too. I set up a final question, but I got one more for you. Because not only do you guys understand football, the sport, you understand football, the media, implicitly. I guess this brings us to all the stories coming out about Shedeur Sanders. We know that this time of year, you're going to see, some leaks and some negativity come out. Now, there could be truth attached to it. There could be some sinister skullduggery attached to it. I think in Shedeur's case, I wouldn't even put it past him where he intentionally interviewed poorly to not get drafted because his father knows how to play this game as well. I also would have an expectation that there would be a brash young man coming from underneath the Deion Sanders tree. That wouldn't surprise me at all. There's also a very good chance maybe the kid is a fucking asshole. Who knows? We don't know. What do you think? Where's the truth, fellas? What do you think is going on with Shedeur Sanders? What kind of talent he is? What kind of personality he is? And how much it's really going to affect where he goes in this draft? Can you scuttle an interview trying to manipulate your draft position? Would that be wise, even if your dad were Deion Sanders?
How long do you have, Damon? There's a lot there to unpack. I would say, first of all, Mary Kay Cabot, the Cleveland Plain Dealer, not just Cleveland.com, had a great one. There's a headline last week. One man's brash is another man's treasure.
Ooh.
See what they did there?
Nice.
I love it.
That's adorable.
Can you scuttle an interview? Go back to Badoo. What year was it? It was 19. Was Kyler drafted in 19? Right?
Yes, because
they just drafted Josh Rosen, 10th overall in 18.
Right. Yes, back to back. Yep.
Kyler
back to back.
was up to be number 1 in 19. Okay, Kyler's agent was Eric Burkhart. Eric Burkhart's college roommate was Cliff Kingsbury. They knew they were going 1. So when it came out after the combine that Kyler didn't test well, number one, he could be a little bit awkward. He's grown up a lot since then. Number two, he knew he was going 1. What did it matter for anyone else?
Right.
And as for Shedeur, listen, let's say you go on a job interview, Damon, Sam, anybody, you go on a job interview, and there's a 10-person interview committee. If 8 of them love you and 2 of them don't, you're probably getting the job. 8 out of 10 people in the room love you. Who cares if 2 don't? And who cares if 2 of those people that don't like you tell their buddy, I didn't like the kid. And then somebody reports that. That doesn't necessarily mean it's character assassination. Not everybody has to love you. Not everybody has to think you're the right person for the job. Like, it isn't necessarily tearing the kid down. Not everyone has to give you an A+. That's one of the possible answers. The other possible answer, Damon, like, you're right. Yeah, they're trying to tear the kid down because they want him to fall in the draft. Like, there are multiple versions of 3 or 4 or interdimensional chess being played here. I don't think any of it is scandalous, unlike other people.
I wonder one thing about Shedeur, which is playing for your dad a benefit or a deficit to what you're going to do when you play without him as your coach? I mean, all his meaningful games to get him to this point, his father has been his coach. Now, for some of us, that would be a nightmare. We would never want that, right? That would be the most, oh, there we go, a little Amber Alert, or maybe more fires. But that would be,
okay there, buddy?
Yeah, we're going to be all right. We're going to be all right. For some of us, it would be a nightmare, right? Our father is our coach. That may be the worst thing, with him looking over our shoulder constantly, and that might drive us to, who knows? Maybe we would melt under that pressure, and he hasn't, right? And that shows that he can do it with anybody. Or has it been to his benefit that his father has been his coach and in his corner all of this time? I think it will be interesting to see him without that, and that's the greatest unknown if you're a team going into the Shedeur Sanders business. I don't know, right? Has he been supported, or has he been called out more than anyone in the room based on his father being there? We don't know. We're not in those meetings. So this has either sharpened him like a diamond or spoiled him. And that's what I don't know right now.
Join us tomorrow night for a 3-hour expose on helicopter parents. Can they help or hurt your draft status? Andrew Siciliano, you certainly impressed those who did not expect to see you in here with us. Wow, Siciliano, James Foster, very impressed. Obviously, he's never met you, Andrew. There's really not that much to be impressed about, but it's great to have you here. Thank you so much.
Mongo just came, pawn a game of life, Dan.
Sammy, always a pleasure, man. We'll do it again real soon. But Andrew, again, thanks for riding with us tonight. Great to see everyone. And thanks for stopping on by. Before everyone leaves, it's real simple. Like, subscribe. We want to thank everyone for the supers. Thanks again to Ike Sandwiches for the sponsorship. Like and subscribe to @Siciliano Show, @Thinking Out Loud, right here at Damon Bruce Plus. And please do remember, sports don't build character, they reveal it. And like that, folks, we're gone.
Good night now.